All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, and I am Beast Mikey. You have now arrived at my train of thought. It's time to talk about Week 14 in the NFL season, but I'm also going to have to talk about the college football playoff and how did we get here. And before we get there, we're going to have the kids do a little bit of Saturday observation. So, kids, if you please.
Stop! He's already dead.
Thank you very much. And let's talk about the four power conferences and their respective championships and how they affected everything that happened on Sunday morning or afternoon, depending on where you were time zone wise. Anyway, let's get to it. One that we expected to see happen was Texas Tech beating up BYU. I mean, they did it a few weeks ago. College Game Day was there to see it. We all saw it. It was a merciless beatdown. BYU kept it close for a half. And then Texas Tech said, all right, that's enough of that, and we're just going to destroy you in the second half. There were turnovers, several of them, and BYU just could not match the offense and the defense, for that matter, of Texas Tech. The Red Raiders, a team I thought would win this conference from jump. You can listen to PSU Gurus episodes for that. And they handled theirs effectively and efficiently. Texas Tech rolls into the college football playoff. They were worthy of a bye. They got one. Let's talk about the next game, which also was a beatdown SEC championship game, Georgia versus Alabama, and Georgia got their lick back. They absolutely did. This was a home game for Georgia. Let's not kid ourselves. People claim this is a neutral site. No, it wasn't. This was a home game for the Bulldogs. It didn't matter whether it was home or away. Georgia was the better team regardless, and Georgia put the boots to Alabama, and Alabama got absolutely clamped up. Ty Simpson had nowhere to go because Georgia's defense is like that. And aside from one really good play on a dump-off play by Alabama, their offense did absolutely nothing. When you run for less yards than every other SEC team with exception to Georgia, and every other SEC team with exception to Georgia didn't play last Saturday, that's a problem. -3 yards rushing. No, we can't have that. We can't have that at all. Well, Alabama had that on Saturday, and Georgia, needless to say, dominated the game effectively and easily. Georgia was worthy of a bye, and they got one. But we'll talk about their seeding in a little bit. Now we get to the best game of the day, Ohio State, Indiana, Big Ten championship game. And the kids didn't have to be there for this one. They were out doing Christmas shopping with their parents. This was a fun game. This was a really good defensive street fight, and both these teams have good defenses. I get it. Both quarterbacks are going to New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. I'll talk about that more so in Power Rankings tomorrow. But I think this was a fun game. This was a fun defensive battle, and one of which that I will give Ohio State credit in this regard. They did well against Fernando Mendoza. They beat up Fernando Mendoza a lot, and he didn't have his best statistical game. He made the throws he had to at the end, but he didn't have his best statistical game by any means. And Indiana, you deserve a whole lot of credit too. You were the first team to have a lead on Ohio State in the second half at all this year. It's amazing that Penn State was the only team to score 2 touchdowns against the Buckeyes in any half this year. Indiana, for that matter, really couldn't score too much of anything because Ohio State's defense is like that. And the fact that the Buckeyes kicker once again missed a chip shot field goal in a monster game, the last Big Ten game in the regular season or before college football playoff play, again, is rather shocking. And the look on Ryan Day's face when he missed the 27-yard kick is absolutely, it tells so many stories. For the second straight year, it's arguable that the Buckeyes may have had the best team in the Big Ten. And for the second straight year, the Buckeyes do not win the Big Ten championship. Indiana wins their first of such since 1988 when they shared, and their first alone since 1945. Yo, that is crazy. But it's true. Indiana was 100% worthy of being number one in the country. And Ohio State absolutely worthy of being a team with a bye. But where did Ohio State land? I'll get to it later. Now, Virginia had their chance to be winning in. You win, you're in the college football playoff. That's it. That's all. You're going to be one of the 5 best conference champions. Okay, cool. Unfortunately, Duke never got the whole memo of Virginia needed to get in to preserve the ACC and let ACC commissioners not have to worry and stress over the college football playoff and whether Miami would get in. And the Duke did not get destroyed like I think a lot of us thought they would, because they got destroyed the first time. And Duke played bar for bar with Virginia. They kept up with them and led for a good amount of this game. And then we get to overtime in this game, and Duke once again continued to handle theirs. And I think the play that really doomed Virginia here was on Duke's touchdown in overtime. Yes, Duke somehow scored first. They got the ball first in the OT session and took the lead and ended up going up by 7. But the fact that there was a roughing the passer call, and in this situation, we're all wondering, like, okay, well, the ball's going to go to the 40 now, right? Like, that's how this is going to go, right? And that's exactly how this was going to go. That's what Duke decided to do with the penalty. They said, all right, it's going to be 15 yards from where you would start as opposed to 15 yards from the kickoff, since they don't do kickoffs in overtime. So the ball starts at the 40, so now it's actually going to be a struggle somewhat for a really good offense in Virginia, by the way, to have to score and try to tie this game and send it to a double OT. Well, this didn't really need to be struggled with at all, because the first play in the overtime was an NO, and that was game, and that's the end of Virginia's season. Virginia had a really good run, a really good year, and yet you're 10-2, and now 10-3 with the conference title loss, and you do not go to the college football playoff. But one 3-team loss did. Let's talk about it. So for those of you who are fans of the Irish, here's where I stand on this situation that you're currently in. The fact that you lost to Miami, you should have never been ahead of them from rip. If you had the same comparable record, which you did, you should have never been ahead of them. I see no reason why, if this was one after the other, that Notre Dame was after Miami. It's obvious that what happened with these rankings, what happened with all of this, especially last Tuesday, was the fact that BYU was basically a meat shield. They didn't compare Notre Dame to Miami. They compared Miami to BYU and said the Cougars are going to be here. And obviously, if the Cougars had won, the Cougars would be in, and it's a dead end for the Hurricanes. And same rule would have applied for Virginia. It would have been a dead end, because I'm not putting Virginia under Miami because Miami was a good team, but Virginia was 10-2, and they won the conference. I'm not putting Virginia over Miami over Virginia in any circumstance. Had Virginia won, yeah, but it's a dead end for Miami. I couldn't do that, and that's where my comp is there. Should Notre Dame be in a conference? Absolutely they should be. Did Notre Dame throw a temper tantrum because the rich kid didn't get their way? Absolutely they did. And every Notre Dame fan seemingly has done the same and taken their cues. They took their ball and went home, and it's wild for the Irish. Now, my argument with Alabama is pretty simple. They should have dropped a spot or two. I don't like that Alabama didn't get punished at all or didn't move at all after getting crushed by Georgia. This is entirely different from what happened last year, where I do stand on you shouldn't get punished for playing an extra game. I think that's perfectly fine. You shouldn't get overly punished. If you lose, drop a spot or two. It happened to Penn State in the Big Ten Championship last year. It happened to SMU in the ACC Championship last year. They lost. Both those teams did by a score apiece, and they both dropped a spot or two. Okay, no problem. Same with Texas. Texas dropped from number 2 to, I believe, number 6. Or number 7. They dropped from 2 to 7 or something like that. And, okay, that's perfectly fine. No problems here. I had no issues with where Texas, Penn State, and SMU slotted when it came to the post-championship Saturday in college football last year. No problems there. They should have all dropped because they all lost. And had Oregon, Clemson wouldn't have been in, but had Oregon or Georgia had lost the other two conference championship games, I'd have had no problem with them dropping. They should have. I thought Penn State versus Oregon was for the number 1 spot in the country. Same with Ohio State and Indiana this year. I thought Texas, Georgia was worthy for the number 2 seed, like Georgia got last year. I think that's the way it should have been. That was perfectly fine. And I think that they didn't handle the Alabama part right, in the sense of Alabama should have dropped. And it seems like what happened on Saturday made up their minds in a sense of, okay, Notre Dame versus Miami is one bubble, and then Alabama versus Miami is the other one, where obviously Notre Dame lost to Miami, and that's cut and dry. That's pretty obvious to me. And now it's Miami versus Alabama as to, okay, who goes here? To me, I think the argument really should have been Miami leaps both of them, and then Notre Dame loses their argument to Alabama because Alabama's strength of schedule was better. Their wins are better. I think that's the route that should have been taken. And I think that would have made this a whole lot easier. A, Alabama gets semi-punished for losing a conference championship game. And B, Notre Dame loses their leg to stand on because there was no buffer, there's no meat shield. And Miami versus Notre Dame, there's no comparison here. Miami won. We move. Yes, Notre Dame coming off as spoiled children is hilarious. And the fact that the ACC is kind of sort of clapping back after years of acquiescing and bending the knee, also nice to see that. Notre Dame just joined a conference, you cowards. And preferably the ACC, because you would have avoided all this and played Virginia in the ACC championship game, and maybe even played yourself for a bye if you had the chance to, with a proper ACC schedule. Again, join a conference, you cowards. Anyway, let's talk about the playoff itself. And on the next episode of PSU Gurus, I actually predicted what my playoff will be. You can listen to myself, even cook up our predictions for the college football playoff on the pods. Listen to us there and see who I think will win the national championship in Miami, ironically. But let's get to the NFL Week 14 games and see what happened here. How many teams got beaten up and how many teams got eliminated? Let's talk about it. Cowboys-Lions was not quite an elimination game, but it was close. And I think both teams kind of sort of played like it in a way. In the sense of Dallas, they came out a little flat, but once they kind of sort of got going, it looked better for them. It looked kind of decent. It just took a quarter and change to really get right. Amon-Ra St. Brown went from, we don't know if he's going to play, to, oh, he's playing really well. Jahmyr Gibbs went from being clamped up by the Packers to no longer being clamped up. And the hat trick of touchdowns that he scored on the Cowboys was much needed for Detroit. And clearly the offense runs through him, because let's face it does. Him or Amon-Ra. And the Lions getting a win that they so desperately needed after what happened last Thursday, or the previous Thursday, Turkey Day, against the Packers. For Dallas, their wild card road is probably a dead end, but it does not mean their division road is. I think there's still a halfway decent shot they can win the division. Why? I'll explain it later. Let's talk about the Saints and the Bucs. And yes, the Saints are dead, but the Saints, like I've said a few times this year, continue to fight for some reason. And Tampa Bay, who I think we kind of all took this for granted for Tampa, where we thought, oh, Tampa's just going to roll New Orleans. And I'm sure this was a lot of people's suicide pool picks. And yet we never got here. We never got to the crescendo. We never got to the finish that we thought we'd get. Turns out New Orleans just outplayed Tampa. And that's got to be really frustrating for the Bucs, who were playing relatively well and yet somehow still look kind of sluggish against the Saints team that you would think they would just bury. And they didn't. It's disappointing for Tampa Bay to lose this game. It really is. And for New Orleans, it's another decent win. You have 3 of them this year, sure, but 2 of them against the 2 teams that are going to fight each other over the last few weeks for the NFC South. I guess that's not a bad thing. It doesn't really kill your draft situation either, because you're going to draft relatively high and can still get a quarterback if you want to. But Tyler Shough has looked pretty solid over the last 6 quarters. I will give him credit for that. Good job, New Orleans. You aren't good, but you're at least not as bad as everyone thought you would be. And for Tampa, just beat the Panthers. I think you'll be fine. We're going to go to other games here, but before we do, we're going to need some input from the kids from this. Can you please talk to us?
Stop! He's already dead.
Thank you very much once again, and we're going to stay in the NFC South and talk about the Falcons, whose season has been effectively dying for the last month and change, and Seattle basically continued to put them in the grave, or at least put them in shallow graves. So this game didn't look like that for a half. Atlanta kept up with them. And then Seattle in the second half said, all right, that's enough of that, and decided to destroy and dismantle whatever was left of the Falcons and their respective carcasses. Rashid Shaheed returned a kick to the crib to start the second half, and it was basically on from there. Seattle put on an onslaught and put on a bloodbath and a beatdown. Sure, this offense is missing Mike Penix and Drake London in the worst way, but Seattle's offense was also able to go to work, and JSN did his thing, scoring another touchdown, because of course he did. And once Seattle stopped making mistakes and started being more efficient, this is pretty easy for the Seahawks. Seattle keeps it moving and keeps pace with the NFC West, knowing full well they're going to have to deal with the Niners and Rams one more time apiece later on. Washington. How do we go from going bar for bar with one of the best teams in the AFC to absolutely getting lit up like Christmas trees by the Vikings? How do we do that in the span of a week? I don't think this is a matter of you let a loss beat you twice. I just think this is a matter of y'all didn't show up and didn't really make the flight at all from Washington or Landover, Maryland, or Ronald Reagan Airport somewhere to Minneapolis. And Minnesota, to go from getting shut out by a really good Seattle team to shutting out the Commanders is quite the thing to do. And quite the thing to do without Justin Jefferson really being that dominant. That's wild to say. Andrew Van Ginkel almost took one back to the crib, and in the process, Jaden Daniels got hurt once again, which is kind of crappy. This Commander season has been an abject disaster, and maybe we can pinpoint this from the Hard Rock takeover that they tried to do on 12th and Market. If you know, you know, in Philly. It's a nice Hard Rock. I've been there once. Anyway, this was a bludgeoning and a beatdown by Minnesota, who just needed some sort of good vibes after what Seattle did to them. That was unspeakable horror. J.J. McCarthy coming back was actually rather good. We could speak on that. He was pretty solid. And the more J.J. McCarthy, maybe the better as he gets more time and rhythm. But as long as he's not calling himself number 9 anymore, I think we're going to be okay. Washington, you just need the season to be over for y'all to be okay. And to get younger on defense, because that would probably be good. So this game was over in about 20 minutes of real-life actual time. The first 5 possessions went like this in this game for the Dolphins and the Jets. It was Dolphins touchdown. It was Jets 3 and out. It was Dolphins touchdown. It was Jets 3 and out. It was Dolphins touchdown, and Tyrod Taylor gets hurt on the next drive, which was an interception, and yeah, the game is over. And it's 21-0, and then Tyrod Taylor gets hurt, and Brady Cook comes in, and he is very undercooked. It was a beating and the normal order being restored in the Jedi of Tua plays against the Jets, Tua beats the Jets. That's kind of what happens here. But it wasn't Tua really doing a lot of the damage. Yes, he threw the first touchdown pass to Waddle while absolutely getting destroyed on a blindside hit. But this was really about the run game. This was about all 3 of Miami's running backs doing work. It was Devon Achane almost having 100 yards through the first quarter. It was Jalen Wright using the other 3 quarters to get to 100 plus and 2 touchdowns on his own. It was Ollie Gordon basically getting shoved into the end zone by half the state of Florida. This was quite the performance by the Dolphins, who continue to go on a little bit of a renaissance here, where they're becoming way more physical and running the ball tremendously well over the last month. They've won 4 straight. They've won 5 of 6. Yes, they are 6-7. No, I'm not doing the shrug. And Miami is not completely dead. They're on life support for the playoffs, but at least they're still alive with a month to go. For the Jets, this is the 3rd straight year that the Dolphins formally eliminate them from playoff contention. This will be the 15th straight year where the Jets don't even make the playoffs. That is the most in professional sports currently amongst the 4 majors. Although we knew this was coming. At least the Jets this time, like last year, like 2 years ago, wore a very dark suit as they kind of got their football season buried in it. That's at least there's that. 4,091 days. That's how long it's been as of last Sunday since the Colts went to Jacksonville and beat the Jaguars. That's also the last time the Colts had beaten Jacksonville when the Jaguars are the home team. There was a game in London that happened during this run, and Jacksonville won that game. They were the home team in said game. This streak will continue for at least another 9 months or so, as Jacksonville was putting the boots to the Colts. And this season went from bad to worse for Indianapolis because this run's been awful lately. We saw that Daniel Jones already had a broken fibula. He was already working with a broken leg. And unfortunately, the other Achilles is the one that gets torn. And we all kind of knew it once we saw it. We knew that was the injury because we've seen it too much over the last couple years. And Daniel Jones, who had played an admirably good season for a lot of it, is unfortunately done for it in a contract year where now we don't know where Daniel Jones is going to go this year. I think he's earned himself a starting job on at least a respectable team. Put him in front of behind a good offensive line, I think you're okay here. In a decent run game, I think you're okay. Other than that, it's looking kind of dicey for Daniel Jones. It didn't look good for Jacksonville at all because Riley Leonard also got hurt during this game, and they don't have Anthony Richardson in this game, which is why Phillip Rivers may come back to the game as opposed to being a Hall of Fame contender. Kind of wild, but true. Anyway, Jacksonville did their part, and Trevor Lawrence played relatively solid ball. Travis Etienne continued to do his thing, and Jacksonville continues to make Indianapolis pay rent or whatever it is because they can't win in that House of Doom down in Duval, and the streak will continue. Jacksonville has now found a way in first place, and it's looking like it may be a two-team race, but the Colts aren't one of the two teams. I don't think we could have seen that coming about a month ago, but here we are. Staying in the AFC South, Tennessee and Cleveland. We thought this game would be ugly. Turns out it was decent. And Kent Ward sending somebody to Grant Delpit to the Shadow Realm was kind of unexpected. Maybe it's weeks of frustration about the Hurricanes, and finally they go to the playoffs so he can let off some steam. Maybe that's what happened here. But yeah, he sent Grant Delpit to the Shadow Realm. It was quite hilarious, and he won an angry run for it. Impressive. Anyway, Shedeur Sanders was balling. I get it, it's the Titans. The Titans are bad. Understood. But the fact that we got a really good performance from Shedeur Sanders. We got almost 400 yards from Shedeur passing. We got touchdowns to Jerry Jeudy, and David Njoku played relatively well. And they did this without much of a run game from Judkins. This was an impressive performance on their part. Everything was good for Cleveland's offense, and then we get to the 2-point conversion at the end where they could have just made the field goal original on the first touchdown in the fourth quarter, but they didn't, so they went for two, and they didn't have Shedeur on the field. Tried to get mega cute and got mega dumb, and Tennessee mega read them. Needless to say, this would not go out well for Cleveland. Tennessee wins the game. Tennessee cost themselves some draft picks, but they may not be in the basement of the zombie tier. Who will be? You'll find out at the end of the video. As for Cleveland, it's another day where you lose and your factory of sadness continues. Not a great weekend for Ohio sports, as I mentioned about the Buckeyes losing, and I mentioned about the Browns losing. The Bengals I'll get to momentarily. At least Myles Garrett got a sack, and now he's at 20. I'm amazed he didn't get any more than that, to be honest. The game of the day as for the 1 o'clock games here. Bengals, Bills, this was fun. This was also in a snowstorm. We love that. We love to see it. Matter of fact, yesterday, or at Monday, depending on when you see this, was the anniversary of the Snow Bowl with the Eagles and Lions. I actually worked at that game. It was quite fun. This Bills game, I'm sure, was fun for everybody who attended and or worked at. And it started really fun for the Bengals because they've been here before. Snowstorm in Buffalo against the Bills, who need the game. That was a playoff game originally where the Bengals picked them apart. And it looked like for a half, the Bengals are going to do the same thing. T. Higgins couldn't be covered. There was nothing they could do to deal with T. Higgins. He could not be stopped. And it looked like Joe Burrow and company were going to dice up the Bills and keep this thing rolling. And then the second half happened. Josh Allen emerged from the booth, or he emerged from the phone booth or the locker room, whatever it was. Somehow there was a cape underneath his jersey, and he went to work and he got busy. The long touchdown run, the Josh Allen making plays all over the field in the second half of this game. And then just when we think, okay, Cincinnati can still handle this, they just need to not make any mistakes. They make mistakes. Pick six right out the gate after the long TD run, and suddenly the game instantly flips. Burrow throws right after that on the next drive, and that kind of cements control for Buffalo in this game. And as it's a devastating series of events, and this is after what was two back-breaking fumbles potentially by James Cook, both in the end zone, by the way, and Cincinnati couldn't finish Buffalo off. And because of this, their season may be completely finished off, despite how bad the AFC North is. And as for Buffalo, they stay alive, and they stay in relatively good shape when it comes to the AFC playoff wildcard race. Will they catch New England? Probably not. But at the very least, they're going to make the playoffs and be a very dangerous team upon entry. Now, we get to the street fight that we know and love, knowing as the Ravens and the Steelers. And yeah, this game was as clunky and as bulky as you would expect it to be from these two teams. We saw some good and bad, especially from Lamar Jackson. Okay, fine. We kind of expected at this point right now, considering how he's played this year at times. We saw some good and bad from Pittsburgh. The good, Aaron Rodgers was pretty solid. The bad, their run defense is awful. They gave up another 200 plus to the Ravens. Now, sure, Derrick Henry and Lamar are going to do that, but another 217 and on their ledger, and Pittsburgh's run defense is cratering. It's not great. Pittsburgh really had the lead for a lot of this game, to be honest, and they looked like the better team for most of it. But then Baltimore woke up in the fourth quarter and said, all right, we got to handle some business. And they were doing so. They got to within a score, and then they were driving down the field once again to try to tie it. And then to get to the play in question of Isaiah Likely. I do not like the letter of the law here, but I respect it. I respect what it is. 2 steps in a football move with control, that's a touchdown. I think that's a fair ruling here. I don't think they got this wrong. Joey Porter made a really good play and deflected the pass away. Very good. Well done. I think that's I can live with that. I can live with the decision that they made. And I know Baltimore had some complaints about that and had some complaints about the fumble situation with Aaron Rodgers. Was it a fumble? Was it an incomplete pass? I can't complain about the rules here. I can't complain about it. I don't think it was. I think the referees got it as well as they could. I'm not really upset here. Anyway, Baltimore completely gaffing and barfing on the 2-minute drill that they had with a timeout to go. There's no way they should have ran out of time, and there's no way they should have been so lackadaisical when it came to that time in question. Very bad clock management by the Ravens to end this game, and to be honest, they probably deserve to lose because of the bad clock management. Pittsburgh, you win this game, and you're probably a win against the Ravens away in Week 18 in Pittsburgh for wrapping up this division and hopefully being a one and done in the playoffs, because I really don't want to see the Steelers in the playoffs. Unfortunately, they may be the best team in this division by default. Baltimore, I am ashamed and disappointed of you. Now we get to the late games, and there was only one that was a beating, and it was the game you expected. Well, one of the games you expected. Kids, if you please.
Stop! He's already dead.
Thank you very much. And this game was over quick. Don't worry, Cardinals. Nobody saw it. We were all watching the Packers and Bears. More on them later. And anyway, this Rams game was over really fast. And it was over because Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, Matt Stafford, Blake Corum, and not as much Davante Adams this week. But the people in question I previously named, aside from Adams, all did damage. And all had long runs. And all had long touchdowns. Nacua had a dominant day. Stafford continued to get back in business and back towards the MVP race. Corum and Kyren Williams were doing their thing and scoring touchdowns. This was a bloodbath of the highest order, and one that we really knew was coming. Cardinals just stood there and pretty much took it. They were basically punching bags the entire day, and there's not much else left to really say here. Rams took their free win and kept it moving. Cardinals took their L, and they also kept it moving. Not much else to say. This game was kind of boring, but at least it wasn't as bad as the Thursday night game that they played previously this season. Yikes, that was bad. Denver and the Raiders, this was pretty simple and simplistic. You got the long play by Marvin Mims on the kickoff return, but other than that, this game really kind of plodded along here. Denver was easily the better team, and they acted like it. They didn't play with their food. They didn't need some ridiculous fourth-quarter shenanigans from Bo Nix. They just came out here. They were up by 2 scores for a lot of it, and they kept it moving. It's well done by the Broncos. Now, obviously, the end has a lot of people in shambles, and Dave Portnoy ready to go after Pete Carroll with all of his intensity, as if this was Super Bowl 48 all over again. And instead, this was quite the hilarious bad beat of all bad beats that happened at the end, with the Raiders kicking a cheap field goal to win the game, to lose the game by a score, and not had the Broncos cover the money line there. Not great for a lot of people who bet on Denver with the spread. Anyway, good win for the Broncos. You did what you're supposed to do. You keep it moving. And now you're tied with New England, who was off this week at 11-2. The race for the 1 seed continues. And thus far, it's in Denver's control. Their schedule is not easy down the stretch, though. Now let's get to the game that everybody actually watched in the 425 slot. Packers, Bears, and it lived up to the hype. Both these teams fought, and both these teams took it very seriously. This was fun from the rip. Good plays by both sides of the ball on both teams. Very entertaining stuff here. We got in-os by both quarterbacks. We got really good plays by both quarterbacks. We got crazy throws by Jordan Love, especially to Christian Watson. And those two were dialed in all day. They were very impressive. We got good throws from Caleb Williams, getting the ball to Colston Loveland and running the ball. Manungai doing his thing. In helmets with shrapnel damage. It was kind of wild. But this was a fun game from start to finish on every side of the ball here. I enjoyed all of this. And I hope a lot of you did too. And then we get to the end of it where I don't know how Josh Jacobs got that run in, where he was able to get out of that third down play and not get stopped so that the Packers would have to punt. And then he would score, the go-ahead score to give them a touchdown lead. And in Chicago, another really clutch drive. Caleb Williams and the Bears are really good at these late-game situations this year. We get to the 4th and 1, and I'm wondering two things. A, why aren't you running the ball? And B, now that you decided to throw it, we completely miss and ignore a wide-open DJ Moore. Because if Caleb Williams stops for a half beat, right, DJ Moore is open over the middle, or at least at this point over the middle, because he's running along with Caleb. And you can clearly see him. There are 3 Packers defenders going towards the sideline. None of them are going towards Moore. Moore catches this ball. Moore can walk into the end zone. And this game is tied. And now we see what Jordan Love's got in a Toyota-thon flow. Anyway, Williams goes for it all. And he underthrows Loveland. And it's an Inno and it's blouses. And the Packers surviving. But this was a really fun game. And I can't wait for the rematch next Sunday in Chicago. That's going to be really fun. The Packers still own the Bears, which is not fun for those in Chicago or those who love the Bears. Anyway, this helped the Rams get the 1 seed, and Green Bay move up to the 2 slot. Chicago plummeted from 1 to 7. Yo, that's crazy. From 2 Super Bowl contenders potentially to the defending AFC champions. And the Chiefs, they're going through it right now. They already had 2 offensive linemen out, or 3 offensive linemen out, I should say. And to start the game. And then to start the actual game itself, they lost a 4th. So now you're dealing with a almost completely backup offensive line against the best pass rush duo in the game right now, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson in Houston, on the best defense in the game. And Houston played like it. Houston played like it a lot. They were coming after Mahomes with every fiber of their being. Mahomes had to be Houdini with some Roadrunner in him, and like the ability to just try to scramble and run away and run for his life at times because Anderson and Hunter were not stopping. They were relentless. They were relentless coming after him. And then when Mahomes even threw the football, Kwame Lassiter and or Shahir and or Derek Stingley and or Jalen Petrie, who was lowering the boom on people. The Houston loves it. They can hit you. They can really hit you. They were coming. They were coming for the ball. They were heat-seeking missiles, basically. And heat-seeking missiles with hands because they were able to get in-os. This was as physical as it gets from the Texans' point of view. And for Kansas City, they did their part. Kansas City kept up with them to some degree. Chris Jones was a menace. And the Chiefs' defense did all that they could to keep them in this game. Unfortunately, the Chiefs' offense just couldn't hold on to the ball, just couldn't make plays. And this was not a great coaching display by Andy Reid, to be honest. Some 4th downs did not go their way, and some of it's their fault. 3-and-outs galore, sure, by both teams. But it was just playing right into Houston's hands. For Houston can make this game as grimy and as dirty as humanly possible. And that's how they can get it done without much offense. Well, aside from Nico Collins. Anyway, good win for the Texans to win and keep up with Jacksonville. And for Kansas City, your playoff hopes are almost completely dead. You probably have to win out, and even then that might not be enough to get you in the playoffs based on all these tiebreakers. Good luck, Chiefs. You're going to need all of it. From the Super Bowl runner-up to the team that beat them in the Super Bowl last year. Eagles-Chargers, a gotta-have-it game for both teams. So this was a pretty good mix of, okay, Justin Herbert's got to run for his life once again because, let's face it, that offensive line is in shambles, and the defense, that is the Eagles, gets pressure but doesn't necessarily get home. Herbert did have some pretty good runs in this game, and it was maybe the best guy who was running the football in said game. Well, aside from Saquon, who did have a long touchdown run and was, I guess, okay otherwise. But to me, this game is more so about what the Eagles didn't do as opposed to what the Chargers did do. What didn't the Eagles do? Take care of the ball. And by Eagles, I mean Eagle and Jalen Hurts. Yikes, there are so many turnovers. You might have done another NO during this pod. Anyway, or during this episode of the Railway Recap. Anyway, this was pretty rough, and pretty rough to see from a quarterback who's generally good at taking care of the ball. For him not to take care of the ball too much in this particular game is shocking to see. Granted, all the NOs weren't his fault, but at least half of them were, and maybe 3 of them were, because he overthrew A.J. Brown on one, he got read like a book on another one, and there were deflections on a couple on the other 2. Plus the fumble. That's not great either. But this was not a really good night for Jalen Hurts. Even with Jalen Hurts self-destructing, the best unit on the field, or at least the unit I trusted the most last night or Monday night, was the Eagles' defense. I thought the Eagles' defense, they were getting after Herbert, and Herbert was under siege for a lot of it. To Herbert's credit, he was able to escape a lot of it and avoid sacks and avoid damage, which he had to because that hand was not helping him out at all. It was not looking great. Anyway, to get to the point of it, and to get to a 19-19 tie, I was really hoping for the Monsters Inc. score here because Monsters Inc. was handling the ESPN2 broadcast. But we get to 22-19 after the Chargers kick the field goal. And I agree with the Eagles. If I win the overtime toss, I want to play defense first. I trust the Eagles defense, actually, to get some sort of a stop because they were limiting Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen for a lot of this game. I would have wanted to play defense first. I would have trusted that unit. If Dicker gets 3, okay, fine. Jalen Hurts, you got time to get down the field. Just don't do anything dumb. And then they got themselves in a situation of 3rd and 16 after a penalty and still got it. Good work there. They were also able to get out of a 4th and 4 because Odafe was too impatient. He's fast, but unfortunately not fast enough to time the snap on that particular play. The Eagles get all the way down to the 15 and everything's looking all right. They don't need to do too much. And then Hurts decides to take a shot to Jahan Dotson. And unfortunately, Hurts got read like a book once again. A great play by the Chargers secondary to get the deflection and the NO and the game. And some girl's soul was basically taken in this game. She got Wiggum. And it's gone viral. We all saw it. It's quite hilarious if you're not an Eagles fan. For those who are Eagles fans, I think a lot of them are very worried this is the 2023 remix. They've covered the first 3 parts of it. Part 1 was getting your soul ripped out. That technically happened in the second game. Chicago did that. You had to lose a late game in Dallas where everybody saw it on national television. Check, you did that. You choked away this game as opposed to getting destroyed in the 1-23. You now have the arc of, okay, Monday night game on the West Coast, it ends in an NO. Well, that happened last Monday with the Chargers. Same way it happened in Seattle. You lose to an NO. Not great. Yeah, things aren't looking so good here. Now we have the arc of you have 3 games against bad teams. Lose 2 of them, and you've really got the 2023 arc. Plus a Buffalo game is a bonus, but Buffalo's pretty good. Speaking of pretty good, that was my record this week. I went 9-5, and my overall record is 126, 73, and 1. Coming up later today, Power Rankings. I can talk about all 32 teams. I'll obviously incorporate the Heisman Trophy candidates somewhere and somehow in these tiers. Who will I put in what city or what station? Either way, Tennessee, you will not be the first stop of my next train of thought. Instead, I gotta go to the Big Apple, or East Rutherford, New Jersey, as it were. Giants, you were off, but you now are on the clock and the first stop of my next train of thought.